The first person to see my face, I died within 8 seconds. The second person the same. I begged them not to remove the veil. I warned them. But no one believed a brown-skinned girl with sorrowful eyes could carry a deadly curse. Zahara never wanted to stand out. She only wanted to study, to live like an ordinary person, but her beauty was a punishment, not a gift. The story you are about to hear is not a legend. It is a truth hidden within the halls of academia, where a girl of color fights not for fame, but for the right to live without hurting anyone. No one knew her name when she stepped through the rusty iron gates of Ebony Haven Academy, the prestigious school for the most exceptional students of color in South Louisiana. People only remembered her by her gaze, a slender, quiet figure, and especially the ash-colored veil that covered her entire face, except for a pair of deep, fathomless eyes that seemed to carry an untold story. Zahara was a stranger amidst the bustling crowd. While other students laughed, showed off their outfits, and boasted about their grades, she quietly chose the last desk in the classroom, pulled out an old notebook, and wrote. She never initiated conversation, nor did she look at anyone long enough for them to look back. At first, people found her strange, but after a few days, curiosity turned into suspicion. What is she hiding under that cloth? The question spread like a fever through the hallways, filled with the scent of printer, ink, and cheap perfume. Some said Zahara had horrific burns. Others claimed she was the daughter of a bayou shaman. But the most terrifying whisper came from the lips of Monique, the so-called uncrowned queen of the academy. Monique wasn't just striking in beauty and wealth. She was renowned for her ability to control the crowd. Every word she spoke spread like wildfire. And from the moment she saw Zahara cross the school courtyard in that tattered ash-colored veil, Monique sensed something she couldn't tolerate. Someone more distinct than her, yet who didn't even try to draw attention. Zahara didn't respond to the mockery. She didn't bow her head. She simply kept walking, her hand gripping the strap of her backpack tightly, as if the summer breeze itself could blow the veil away. In class, she submitted her assignments the earliest. In the library, she stayed the longest. Numbers, charts, history. Zahara absorbed them all as if they were safe languages that hurt no one. But that very silence became kindling for cruel games. Monique began spreading rumors that Zahara was a descendant of a Yoruba witch burned alive in the Delta, that the ash-colored veil was a charm to keep her soul from escaping, that anyone who saw her face would be cursed to death. Zahara heard it all. She didn't need ears to hear. The looks in people's eyes were enough. Hesitant, avoidant glances, the stifled giggles behind her as she walked. But she remained silent, not because she was weak, but because she was afraid. Afraid of something greater than humiliation, the fear that they were right. Sometimes she stood before the mirror in her dorm room, removed the veil, and saw herself a soft, pure face, almost unreal. But with it came memories of times when someone had accidentally seen her and silently passed away, their heart stopping for no apparent reason. So Zahara didn't fight back, not because she didn't want to, but because she believed silence was the most humane way to protect others from herself. But day after day, as the rumors grew more vicious and Monique's gaze grew colder, a question kept rising in her throat. Could silence save her forever? Or would it be the thing that killed her, little by little? Some traps don't need to be traps. They are wrapped in charm, placed on trust, and sprinkled with a touch of gentleness to make people step in willingly. Monique understood this. And Jamal was the most perfect hook she had ever cast. The girl with the ash-colored veil was increasingly unsettling everyone, not because she did anything wrong, but because she did nothing at all. Zahara's silence became a mirror reflecting all the pretense in the academy, and Monique couldn't let that continue. Jamal was someone who drew every gaze without trying. Tall, with warm dark skin, a half smile, and a basketball game that looked like a dance, he was the archetype for every viral post online. But what made Jamal special was he had never fallen into Monique's grasp. And for someone used to being in control, that silent rejection was the sweetest slap. Monique smiled when she approached Jamal. She didn't need to threaten. She only hinted. A promise of fame, of spotlight. She knew what made people like Jamal waver. Not money, but recognition. Just one photo, she said. You don't need to do anything else. She won't even know. Jamal didn't say anything, but his gaze drifted, as if he were trying to convince himself it was just a harmless game. He knew Zahara, knew she was the last person who deserved to be dragged into these games. But he also knew himself once invisible, and Monique was promising to make him impossible to ignore. A few days later, Zahara began noticing Jamal in lectures. He often arrived late, sat quietly beside her, saying nothing, just being there. Then one day, he handed her an old brown-covered book, saying nothing but giving a nod. She flipped through a few pages and saw notes in black ink about Yoruba priestesses, ancient prophecies, children bearing uncontrollable energy. Zahara knew those books weren't easy to find. She felt the meaning behind the gift, and she began to smile. Not much, but enough for the veil to tremble slightly as her shoulders shook. Jamal didn't rush. He sat with her in the library, walked with her to the courtyard after class. He didn't ask too much, just listened, sometimes letting slip small, self-deprecating jokes. With each passing day, he seemed to draw closer, not just physically, but emotionally. But what he didn't know was Zahara's heart was still a labyrinth. Though she was beginning to trust him, a part of her kept reminding her that everything too good to be true might be, that this sudden gentleness could be a dagger hidden in flowers. Jamal was no longer certain either. At first he thought this was a simple task. But now, every time he looked into Zahara's eyes beneath that veil, he saw something deeper, a sadness so beautiful it made you want to wipe it away, not capture it. Still, the knot was tied, and the cost of defying Monique might be heavier than betraying a quiet girl. Between fame and conscience, Jamal was lost in the very kindness he had pretended to create. All right, my dear audience, get ready for a story that will leave you speechless. Take a second to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment with a number 1 to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see someone joining us from all over the world. There are moments when time doesn't flow, it chokes in your throat, trapped between reason and instinct. That night, in a small room scented with old wood and paper books, Zahara fell asleep amidst an open book and a still warm cup of tea. The breeze from the window gently stirred the curtain, making the golden lamplight blur as if it were witnessing something it couldn't stop. Jamal sat at the edge of the table, his hands clasped tightly, his eyes lacking their usual confidence. The girl before him, the one who had smiled for the first time after years of hiding from the world, was sleeping soundly, unguarded. He should leave. He knew he should stand up, gather the remnants of his conscience, and walk out that door, taking with him the study sessions, the library afternoons, and those silent moments together that felt worth preserving. But then Monique's promise echoed in his mind like the shrill whistle of wind chimes. Just one photo. One photo in exchange for social media fame, for recognition, for the attention he had craved during the years he was seen as invisible. Jamal stood up, stepping lightly toward Zahara. His heart raced, not from excitement, but from fear. Not fear of her, but of himself. Fear of the moment he knew if he went further, he would no longer be the same person. The ash-colored veil was tied skillfully, as if each knot held an ancient ritual. He reached out, slowly, as if afraid to break something fragile. One knot, then another, and the thin fabric fell to the floor like a feather lost from the sky. In that moment, the world seemed to stop. Zahara's face was revealed in the dim light. It wasn't a beauty humans could comprehend. It was something that made you gaze in awe and tremble in fear because it was too real. A beauty beyond standards, radiating a quiet light like the moon over a dark sea. And at that moment, Jamal collapsed to the floor, his hands trembling, eyes wide open, lips moving soundlessly. His heart stopped as if his body couldn't bear what it had just seen. Zahara woke with a start at the strange sound. She sat up, dazed, then realized the veil was gone, and Jamal lay motionless at her feet. The air in the room seemed to freeze. She rushed to him, cradling him, calling his name in panic. But Jamal no longer responded. His breath had vanished. His heart had stopped. And those wide-open eyes were the last to have seen her face. She cried. Not a sobbing cry, but a desperate wail that tore through the silence she had lived in her entire life. She had warned them. She had told them, but no one believed her. The door burst open. Screams echoed from other students. Rumors spread like wildfire. Zahara killed someone. She's a witch. She cursed him. And in the growing crowd gathering in the hallway, one face smiled unblinkingly: Monique, standing tall, radiant in the darkness, as if she had just witnessed a chess game end exactly as she had calculated. No sound echoes louder than silence stretched too long. In the days following Jamal's death, Zahara lived among piercing stares, whispers sharp as thorns, and eyes that turned away as if she were a wind carrying calamity. The academy didn't condemn her for no reason, could define a truth that neither medicine nor science could touch. But truth doesn't need a verdict to become a burden. And the whispering glances of the crowd sometimes weighed heavier than chains. Zahara withdrew, no longer staying late in the library, no longer meeting Jamal's gaze beside her, no longer walking steadily down the hallways. Each passing day was a smaller version of herself, as if she were living half a life so the other half wouldn't be seen. She wanted to disappear, to leave the academy, to return to the small house in the swamp, where her mother still cooked okra stew by hand, where no one whispered about death, or ash-colored veils, or things too vast for a girl to carry on her shoulders. But when her mother set the bowl of stew on the table, looking deeply into her daughter's eyes through the thin veil, she said only one thing: "The curse doesn't lie on your face, Zahara. It lies in the silence you let others create for you." That night, Zahara didn't sleep. She removed the veil in the darkness, not to see herself, but to remember. To remember Jamal. To remember his eyes just before everything went dark. He hadn't done anything wrong, but he hadn't truly listened to her either, hadn't believed her, like so many others. And she had let it happen because she hadn't spoken up. The next morning, she returned to the academy. No one expected her to come back. No one thought she was strong enough. But Zahara walked through the courtyard like a changing season's breeze, not loud, not rushed, but undeniable. The veil was still there, covering her face as always. But this time, it was no longer a shield. It was a symbol of her choice. When she stood in the central courtyard where students gathered, where Monique was laughing with her friends as if everything had been settled, Zahara didn't need to shout. She only needed to begin. And the crowd fell silent on its own. Each word she spoke peeled back layers of masks. How Monique spread rumors, how she manipulated Jamal, how she stood there, watching pain unfold and called it victory. No evidence was needed. No shouting was necessary, just the truth. And truth, when spoken by someone who had been silent too long, held the power of a sandstorm in a parched land. Monique paled. The whispers now weren't directed at Zahara, they were aimed at her. For the first time, someone dared to stand up. For the first time, someone made the crowd applaud, not for standing out, but for being real. Zahara stood there, shedding no tears, taking no steps back. Beneath that veil were eyes no longer afraid. Only resolve remained. And the audience finally heard that voice, the voice buried too long under rumors. When someone who has been silent too long finally speaks, can the one who always shouted loudest still hold control? And Monique, how will she react when her power begins to crack? Fame always comes with noise. But when Malik arrived at Ebony Haven Academy, he brought something entirely different. Stillness. No fanfare, no boasting. Just gentle eyes, a slow smile, and a notebook always at his side, meticulously recording Yoruba epics in faded blue ink. People spoke of Malik as someone who knew too much but never needed to prove it. He came from another prestigious academy, deeply studied in cultural roots, having researched Southern mythologies. And the first thing he did wasn't to pry about Zahara, it was to listen. He heard the rumors about Jamal's death, heard the story of the ash-colored veil, heard about the girl who let no one see her face, but not once did his eyes shy away from her. Zahara noticed Malik the way one notices the first cool breeze of the season after scorching days, not overtly, but impossible to ignore. He didn't approach her with pity, didn't try to make her laugh. He simply existed and waited. In shared classes, when others avoided sitting near Zahara, Malik chose the empty chair beside her without hesitation. He tilted his Yoruba book slightly toward her, like an invitation without pressure. And Zahara, after building walls of silence for so long, began to draw doors. They exchanged stories about ancient languages, divine legends, and women who carried beauty not of this world. Zahara smiled, not the cautious smile she had given Jamal, but a rare ease, as if someone truly understood the weight she carried on her shoulders. But fear lingered, like a shadow trailing a candle's light. One late afternoon, in an empty reading room, she turned to Malik, her eyes beneath the veil brimming with tears. She spoke of the curse, the deaths, the fear of destroying everyone she loved, and she said the words she had held back from everyone. If you see my face, you will die. Malik didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, not with fear or shock, but as if seeing a beautiful scar someone still hid. Finally, he smiled, light as a breeze. Beauty doesn't kill anyone. Indifference is what makes people stop living. Zahara turned away, wanting to believe but not daring to. But Malik, needing no magic or courage, only humanity, gently stepped closer. He didn't rip the veil off harshly. He only touched its edge, light as if touching pain itself. And when the fabric fell, Zahara closed her eyes. Her heart tightened, waiting for a collapse. But nothing happened. No sound of falling, no breath cut short, just Malik, still standing there, looking at her, his gaze unchanged, not overwhelmed, not retreating, just deeper, gentler. Then he whispered, as if to himself, maybe because I love you truly. And Zahara, for the first time in her life, cried not out of fear, but because she was alive. The Yoruba festival that year was unlike any before. The academy courtyard was draped in vibrant woven fabrics, the drums resounding like a heart pulsing with each beat. Students donned radiant traditional attire, dancing under the golden sunset light that glowed like honey. But amidst the joyful steps and laughter rippling like waves, There was still an empty space, as if waiting to be filled. Zahara stood backstage, her heart pounding beneath her indigo cloth dress. The familiar ash-colored veil was no longer on her face. It rested neatly in her palm, carefully folded like a final ritual. The afternoon breeze brushed through her hair, light as a whispered blessing from ancestors. She no longer feared others' gazes, no longer hid behind layers of fabric, and no longer worried whether she was strong enough to exist without hurting anyone. When Zahara's name was called, the drums fell silent. She stepped forward one step at a time, slowly but proudly. And when the last rays of sunlight touched her skin, every gaze turned to her not out of fear, but because they couldn't look away. No one died. No one retreated. There was only silence, not heavy, but reverent, like an acknowledgement. An elderly teacher in the front row covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. She whispered, as if to herself, "The curse is gone. Love has saved you." Zahara smiled. Not a smile of triumph, but a smile of breathing. For the first time after years of living with the fear of being a danger, she could exist without making anyone disappear. She was no longer the girl who carried death. She was a survivor, a conqueror, a symbol of a generation learning to stand tall, unhidden, unyielding. At the edge of the crowd, Monique watched, her face pale as paper. She had once controlled everything, rumors, power, fear, but she couldn't control someone who dared to speak. And for the first time, she felt small in a world she no longer swayed. No one photographed her. No one turned their backs on Zahara. Fame didn't explode. It simply crumbled quietly, like sand beneath her feet. Zahara didn't look back. She didn't need to see Monique walk away. She no longer lived for those who hurt her. She lived for herself. And with each step she took off the stage, waves of applause rose behind her, unceasing, not because she was beautiful, but because she was real. As the ceremony ended, the Yoruba drums gradually faded, leaving only the gentle breeze tugging at the hem of Zahara's dress as she stepped down from the stage. No more curious glances, no more whispers behind her back. Only a respectful silence remained. She was no longer the veiled girl, no longer a symbol of something no one dared to understand. She was proof that a soul once buried by fear could still rise, not for revenge, but to illuminate. In a distant corner, amid the dispersing crowd, someone quietly raised a camera. A video of Zahara was uploaded, and within a single night, the world began to ask, who is she? And why do her eyes make me want to understand myself better? Zahara had never sought fame, but truth has a strange way of spreading. And when someone dares to shed their darkness, that light reaches even the places thought to be forgotten. Perhaps, out there somewhere, another person is still hiding their face. The question is, are they ready to step forward? If Zahara's story moved you, or if you've ever felt you had to hide a part of yourself to be accepted, share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know, where are you watching this video from? And what touched you the most? Don't forget to share this video with someone living in silence. It might just be the light they're waiting for. And if you want to know what happens when Zahara faces the world beyond the academy, a world far harsher, comment, "I want to see part 2. We're listening. No. Marcus, did you betray me? Inside the Stone Mountain estate, Selena Carter sat frozen before the old wedding album. Her husband had been gone for 3 years, leaving behind a cold, hollow void. But this afternoon, on a rain-soaked highway, she saw with her own eyes a black boy of about 13 carrying 2 newborn infants, and all 3 of them bore the same rare hazel eyes as Marcus. Her heart clenched. Her reason screamed leave, yet instinct propelled her out of the car, rushing toward those unfamiliar children. In that instant, Selena understood. Her frozen life was about to be upended. That afternoon, the rain fell on Atlanta like a heavy curtain,
covering the slick roads and endless streams of traffic. Inside a black Escalade slowly rolling through the intersection, Selena Carter sat silently in the back seat. For years, people had called her the Ice Queen, the powerful real estate magnate of Stone Mountain, living in a grand white mansion guarded by sentries and towering iron gates. Every step she took was bound to billion-dollar deals, venomous rumors, and a void no one dared to mention. 3 years after the death of Marcus Carter, her husband, no child's cry had ever echoed through that cold house. To outsiders, her life looked dazzling. But behind the tinted glass of the car, Selena was left with nothing but suffocating stillness. Meetings, files, contracts came one after another, but none could fill the emptiness that, each night when the lights went out, surged back sharp and unrelenting. In the world of finance, she was the model of strength and coldness. In Atlanta's whispers, she was simply a heartless woman, childless, familyless, with nothing but money and high walls built around her. And then fate appeared without warning. The car stopped at a red light, wipers sweeping furiously against the rain, slashing across the windshield. Selena glanced outside, her weary eyes suddenly freezing. In the drenched median strip, a thin boy, about 13, trembled as he clutched 2 newborns. No raincoat, no shoes, only a shredded piece of plastic wrapped around the tiny bodies, shivering in his arms. Faint cries pierced through honking horns, tearing down the invisible wall between her world and theirs. The driver glanced in the mirror, ready to scoff, street beggars using kids for pity plays. But Selena heard nothing, her tightly locked heart seized in pain. For so long she had turned away from such sights not out of cruelty, but fear. Every child's gaze reminded her of irretrievable loss, the years of failed treatments, the tears Marcus once wiped away as they left the hospital empty-handed. But this time those eyes gave her no permission to look away. The baby girl in the boy's left arm suddenly looked up. Rare hazel glinted under the street lamp, identical to Marcus Carter's. Time froze. Selena clenched her fist, breath quickening. Impossible. She blinked, but then the other twin looked straight at her, the same shimmering brown that could not be mistaken. Her whole body shuddered. For years she had lived believing Marcus had died, carrying away every hope of a family. Yet now, 2 strangers bore his most undeniable mark. The car door swung open. Selena stepped out, heedless of designer heels sinking into puddles, heedless of rain soaking her dress. The assistant rushed behind with an umbrella, but she walked straight ahead. The boy shrank back, his eyes both fearful and defiant, his arms locking tight as if the world itself sought to snatch the fragile lives from him. Selena bent down, her eyes meeting his. No explanation was needed. The truth showed itself in every movement. This was no ruse. This was a child's desperate battle with fate. His name was Malik Johnson. In a trembling voice, he confessed that his mother had died during childbirth, leaving him just 13 to cradle 2 infant sisters. No help, no shelter. Only thin bowls of porridge from the church, sometimes scraps of bread. Malik had learned to rock his sisters to sleep under cold awnings, to hush their cries with the frail warmth of his own body. Listening, Selena's throat tightened. She had heard many tragic stories, but never had one struck straight at her heart like this. Every word dragged her back to those endless nights of helplessness, when Marcus sat by her hospital bed holding her hand, promising they would endure. Now that promise lay shattered in cruel reality, 2 children with his eyes trembling before her. The assistant whispered, "Don't get entangled with street trouble, ma'am. This isn't our business." But Selena no longer heard. The icy wall around her heart had cracked open. Where rain once made her turn away, it now pushed her forward. She stretched out her arms, not as Stone Mountain's real estate queen, not as the heartless ice queen, but as a woman facing the most primal yearning to cradle a child, to be called mother. She gave the order firmly. Malik hesitated, suspicion hard in his gaze, but the gentleness in her voice coaxed him to follow. Tiny hands were wrapped in soft cashmere scarves. The crying ebbed into the warm rhythm of sleep. Malik sat curled beside them, clothes drenched, eyes still wary, but for the first time, a spark of hope flickered there. The escalade rolled forward, leaving behind the storm and carrying all four toward the iron gates of Stone Mountain. Selina sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the two fragile faces. She did not yet know what awaited a belated miracle or a shattering betrayal, but her heart knew this moment had already changed everything. Was it the buried yearning for motherhood rising again, or was she about to face the cruelest truth of her life? And before we continue the main story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. That night, the Stone Mountain estate sank into an uncanny silence. The iron gates were shut, yellow lamps stretched along the rain-soaked driveway, illuminating the escalade returning from the storm. Inside, the Carter family's private doctor busied himself examining the three drenched children Selina had brought home. The weak heartbeats of the twin baby girls made him frown. Malnutrition, hypothermia, immediate care required, his raspy voice declared without a hint of reproach. Malik sat in the corner, his clothes still damp, his frail body trembling in shivers. No stethoscope or tests were needed. Anyone could see the boy had pushed himself far beyond a child's endurance. Selina stood motionless by the window, watching rain continue to patter against the rose garden. She had faced hundreds of grueling boardroom meetings, stood before directors' eyes sharp as daggers, but rarely had her heart pounded so violently. The scene before her was a warped mirror of her own emptiness. Three children huddled, a boy forced into fatherhood, two fragile lives gasping for breath. Suddenly Marcus's words echoed back, his voice tender yet resolute. "It doesn't matter if we cannot have children. You are my family." Tears welled at the corners of Selina's eyes, but she quickly lifted her head, hiding them from the doctor and nurse. She knew all too well that in Atlanta's elite circles, even a single tear from the Ice Queen could become sensational headlines. Yet tonight, as strangers lay within her vast guest room, she felt her heart stripped of armor. The grief she had buried for 3 years was transforming into something else, a hunger for truth. At last, Malik's small voice broke the silence. His mother was Angela Johnson, an elementary school teacher in College Park. The woman had died giving birth to twins, leaving her 13-year-old son adrift. Malik spoke of her kindness, beloved by her students, never wealthy but always teaching him that dignity mattered most. Selina said nothing. The name Angela Johnson cut across her past like a blade, recalling Marcus's hidden phone calls, his unexplained trips, the silences she had never pierced. When the room emptied, Selina entered the library. Rows of mahogany shelves, home to dozens of old albums, still carried the scent of warm wood. She pulled a volume from the highest shelf, opened it, and time spun backward. In a photograph from a charity gala 15 years ago, Marcus stood among local teachers. One bright face emerged, Angela, hair neatly tied, hazel eyes glowing. Selina felt the breath leave her chest. Those eyes, the same ones, now staring back at her through the newborns. In that instant, Selina knew she could not stop. Whispers of the elite, the sneers of rivals, even the Carter family's fierce opposition, all of it meant nothing. Only the truth mattered. And there was only one way to claim it: science. She called the doctor, instructing him to prepare a DNA test kit. "Compare with Marcus's archived records," she ordered, her voice low but unyielding. The night dragged on sleepless. Selina sat alone in the grand parlor armchair, firelight dancing across her face. Each minute passed heavy, as if the clock's hands dragged her past along with them. She remembered Marcus's final moment, when he whispered for her to promise she would live strong. She had kept that promise, becoming the unyielding Ice Queen. But now, with every faint breath from the adjoining room, she felt herself reaching toward another truth. Perhaps Marcus had carried a secret to his grave. By morning, pale light filtered through the white curtains. She entered the makeshift infirmary and found Malik slumped asleep in a chair, his hand gripping the crib's edge. A lock of curly hair fell across his brow, his face pale yet resolute. Selina touched his shoulder lightly, not to wake him, only to observe. In those narrow shoulders, she saw Marcus, the man who once carried the world on his back to shield her. Back in her study, Selina carefully placed Angela's photograph beside her own wedding portrait. Two pairs of hazel eyes faced each other, one from the past, one from the present. The contrast urged her more fiercely than ever. She would go to the end. The Carter family was notorious for ruthlessness, silencing whispers of illegitimate children in the past. But this time, Selina knew, if she did not confront it, the truth would be buried again. And she could not allow these children to grow up in the shadows as Malik had. In the stillness of the morning, she signed the DNA request. Her signature trembled slightly, but her will was steel. Whatever the result, it would change her life forever, either freeing her from doubt or thrusting her into a storm greater than any she had ever faced. 3. Echoed with the soft rustle of papers. On the polished wooden desk lay the DNA report just returned from Emory Hospital's laboratory. The cold numbers printed in bold, 99.98%. Selina Carter's eyes moved across the line, confirming the blood relationship. There was no room left for doubt. The twin baby girls were indeed the biological daughters of Marcus, her late husband. And Malik, the frail boy with small yet unyielding shoulders, was the eldest son Marcus had hidden all his life. Selina sat motionless. Each word weighed upon her heart, both a dagger of betrayal and a key unlocking an undeniable truth. In that moment, memories of Marcus's embraces, his solemn vows, came crashing violently against the black and white letters before her. Yet beneath the shock, she also felt something else, a strange calm. At last, the vague suspicions, the missing pieces in her marriage had taken form. That afternoon, Selina wandered through the library. Light filtered through the glass windows, laying a mournful golden sheen across the mahogany shelves. She opened an old drawer, where letters, postcards, and notes Marcus had once kept were stacked. Among the yellowed papers, she found an envelope unsent. The rounded handwriting bore the signature, Angela. Slowly, she drew the paper out, the trembling handwritten lines revealing themselves. Marcus, tell your wife the truth. Let her know I never wish to break your family, but children should not grow up in the shadows. Selina closed her eyes. Pain surged within pain at betrayal, yet also sorrow for the woman now gone, who had found the courage to urge her lover to confess. Angela had departed quietly, leaving behind 3 orphans and a secret buried in Marcus's heart. That fragile silence did not last. News of the Ice Queen's sudden return with strange children spread across Atlanta. And as the sun sank behind the hills, black SUVs rolled one after another up the road to Stone Mountain. The iron gate groaned as muscular men in suits stepped out. At their head was Elias Carter, Marcus's brother, his stern face carved deep with ambitious lines. The Carter family had long been notorious for ferocity and hunger for power. Elias mounted the stone steps, the yellow lamps casting his features in relief. Without greeting, his voice rang cold, declaring that Selina had gone too far, that she was dragging street children into the Carter bloodline, staining the family's name. The thud of men's boots against the stone floor reverberated like a warning. Selina did not retreat. In a plain black dress, she stood tall in the great hall, her sharp gaze sweeping across each face. Malik trembled behind the door. The twins clutched tight in a nanny's arms, but Selina stepped forward, her voice low, each word resounding. Marcus's blood is my blood too. The statement fell like a blade slicing through the arrogance surrounding her. Elias clenched his fists. He swore to drag the matter into court, to spread rumors that Selina had lost her sanity after her husband's death, that she intended to hand over the entire fortune to outsiders. Behind the tinted glass of the SUVs, camera flashes exploded paparazzi, tipped off, waited to capture the Ice Queen's collapse. Within Selena, another storm rose, but this time it was not fear. She knew from the moment the DNA results appeared, the battle was no longer a choice, it was a duty. She turned back to Malik, saw him clutching the twins, his eyes heavy with worry yet lit with a fragile spark of hope. That gaze alone kept her standing firm. That night, Stone Mountain became a hidden battleground. On one side, the Carter clan with power and reputation. On the other, a solitary woman with 3 orphans in her arms. Selena drew a long breath, her voice ringing like steel. If it is war you want, then war you shall have. But remember, this justice does not belong to the loudest voice, but to the truth. Beyond the gates, a cold wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the sense of a great storm approaching. Deep down, Selena understood. What transpired at Stone Mountain tonight was only the prelude. The true battle would be fought in the Georgia courts, where every word and every piece of evidence could determine the fate of a billion-dollar empire. That morning, Atlanta woke to a fever of news. On the radio, on television, across every social media feed, the image of the Stone Mountain estate, lit up in the night, surrounded by black SUVs, had become the center of every conversation. People no longer called Selena Carter by the familiar name, Ice Queen. Instead, they used phrases half mocking, half skeptical. Lady Carter and the mysterious children. The million-dollar family drama. Silence was no longer an option. Selena knew better than anyone. If she did not speak for herself, the public would rewrite her story with lies. And so, 3 days later, an announcement was sent to every outlet, a public press conference at the Atlanta Civic Center. The name was big enough, formal enough, to signal to all that Selena Carter was not hiding. She would face the public head-on. That afternoon, the Civic Center hall overflowed. Cameras aimed forward, dozens of reporters jostled for space, microphones lined the wooden podium. The air was thick with anticipation. When the doors opened, Selena entered in a pearl-white dress, her face free of heavy makeup. In her hand was a thick envelope, edged in red, the DNA results. Behind her, Malik walked slowly, his eyes still anxious but his steps firmer, while the twin girls, swaddled in thin blankets, slept peacefully in the nanny's arms. Selena stopped at the podium. Flashbulbs flared like lightning. She did not look into the lenses, but straight into the audience, her voice calm but resolute. She opened the envelope, drew out the papers, and held them high. These are the DNA test results confirming the biological relationship between Marcus Carter and these 3 children. No embellishment was needed. The bold 99.98% figure alone was enough to make the entire hall erupt. The press reeled. Headlines raced like wildfire. Ice Queen brings Marcus Carter's illegitimate children home. Carter dynasty divided. Reporters shouted. Questions fired from every angle. But Selena did not retreat. She stepped forward, her gaze unwavering, then placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. They are not illegitimate. They are my family, and I will never abandon Marcus's blood. A heavy silence hung for a few seconds before the hall exploded into chaos. Some reporters stood to applaud, others smirked, turning back to write their sensational leads. Cameras swung rapidly, capturing every movement, every blink. Within hours, all of Atlanta was ablaze. People whispered in coffee shops, offices, schools. Half hailed her as a brave woman who dared to defend the truth. Half mocked her, claiming she had lost her mind, clinging to glory through children of uncertain origin. The pressure came not only from public opinion. The Carter Holdings Board of Directors, long tense, now issued an open letter demanding Selena step down as CEO to protect the company's reputation. In glass-walled conference rooms, executives murmured about falling stock prices, withdrawing partners, stalled projects. To them, the 3 children were a thorn in the side, a stain of reputation that could not be tolerated. But Selena did not back down. At the emergency meeting, she stood before the very men who had once shaken Marcus's hand, her voice calm but cutting. Do not forget, Half of this empire was built by my hands, and I will never abandon what belongs to Marcus, including the children who carry his blood. Faces blanched, some heads bowed, but none dared to rebuke her outright. That night, Selena returned to the estate, sitting alone on the balcony overlooking the rose garden. The faint laughter of Malik carried from the next room, the twins cooing softly in their crib. She knew the storm of public opinion still raged outside, but in that fleeting moment of peace, she felt her heart finally beating with its true rhythm. The story was no longer about reputation, shares, or rumors. It was now a battle to protect her new family, a family the world sought to tear apart. And Selena understood. The fiercest battle still lay ahead, where the courts of Georgia would become the final battlefield, and every word, every piece of evidence could decide the fate of billions. And now, dear audience, pause for just a moment to hit subscribe before we continue to the next part of this story, but only if you truly resonate with what I've shared here. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always wonderful to see people joining us from all around the world. That morning, Fulton County Court was ablaze with camera lights. Reporters lined the sidewalks, satellite vans jammed the street, all waiting for what felt like a decisive battle. The heavy wooden doors of the courthouse creaked open, revealing Selena Carter stepping inside. In a deep navy suit, her frame was composed, her eyes burning with fierce resolve. Beside her, Malik walked nervously, while the twin baby girls were carried in the nanny's arms, fragile as slivers of light in the heavy air. Across from her, at the plaintiff's table, stood Elias Carter. His face was cold as stone, eyes razor-sharp. He had prepared every argument to bury his sister-in-law. The lawsuit was meticulously drafted, accusing Selena of being psychologically unstable after her husband's death, dangerous to both the company and its assets. Elias demanded the freezing of all Carter Holdings assets and the removal of Selena's guardianship over the 3 children. The courtroom buzzed. Many believed this strike would eliminate Selena from the game forever. The trial began. In the vast chamber, with its high ceilings, the judge's gavel resounded like a tolling bell. Attorneys rose in turn. Elias's side presented witnesses, several board members, a former gardener, even a psychologist hired to declare Selena mentally unbalanced. Their testimonies fell sharp and relentless, like knives. Selena sat still, listening to every word. Her heart wavered, but her hands remained steady on the table. Then her lawyer stood. A sealed envelope was produced, the DNA results. The bold 99.98% flashed across the projection screen, confirming beyond dispute the blood ties between Marcus Carter and the 3 children. Gasps rippled through the room, but that was only the beginning. Her lawyer called further witnesses, the doctor who examined the children the night they were brought to Stone Mountain, and a nun from the College Park Church who had known Angela Johnson. Her voice was gentle yet unwavering. Angela never wanted to hide. She only wished for her children to live in their true name. The words fell, stirring compassion even among strangers in the gallery. The courtroom atmosphere shifted. Until then, Elias and his allies had relied on prejudice that Selena was cold, unstable. But as genuine faces testified, as true voices rose, the wall of suspicion began to crack. Selena remained silent, wielding only her gaze. She needed no rebuttal. The truth was speaking for itself. When it was her turn, Selena rose. Her voice was low, not loud, but so clear it seemed to push all other sounds aside. She spoke not of shares or power, but of family. A family is not measured only by blood. It is measured by love, by responsibility. I did not choose these children for leverage. I chose them because they needed a home. And Marcus, if he were alive, would have done the same. The words fell like a final gavel stroke on the hearts of all present. The judge was silent for a few seconds, his eyes fixed on Selena as if searching for something. Then his gavel struck 3 times. The ruling rang out. Selena Carter would retain guardianship of Malik and the twins. The petition to freeze her assets was denied. The courtroom erupted, half sighed in relief, half seethed in anger. Elias's teeth clenched, his face flushed red, promises of appeal spilling like final daggers. I will not let you destroy this family. You will lose, Selena. But she only turned, her gaze calm, her voice quiet as ice. You will lose, Elias, because I have the truth. Outside, Atlanta's sky was overcast, but in Malik's eyes, a flicker of light appeared. He gripped Selena's hand, saying nothing, only walking silently at her side. The children now had a home, but Selena knew. The battle had only begun. The Carter family had never known surrender, and the public still thirsted for the downfall of an ice queen who dared to defy an empire. The court had spoken, but neither the Carter dynasty nor public opinion had given up. Would Selena have the strength to hold her new family together, or would the next storm wash it all away? In the days following the Fulton County court ruling, Atlanta's skies seemed clearer. No more convoys of black SUVs encircled Stone Mountain, no more dense barricades of reporters at the iron gates. Instead, soft laughter of children now floated from within the White Mansion, a sound that had been absent for years. Malik began his new life. He was enrolled at a high school in Decatur, where an old but warm music room housed a dark wooden piano. Before those keys, the boy who once carried his infant sisters through the rain now placed his slender fingers upon them, practicing chords and melodies. Music became his second language, guiding Malik out of the shadows of his childhood into a world where hope could resound. Meanwhile, the twin girls thrived. Aaliyah learned to toddle through the halls, her black curls bouncing, while Amira preferred the window, her hazel eyes wide, as if trying to capture every ray of sunlight. The once cold mansion now rang with babbling and laughter, its marble walls no longer echoing emptiness but singing like a living symphony. Selena, once known as the Ice Queen, found herself transformed in every small rhythm of life. She woke early to take Malik to school, listened to his piano practice in the evenings, sat cross-legged on the floor with the girls building castles from wooden blocks. The high heels that once clicked through boardrooms appeared less often. Instead, soft slippers traced steps through the rose garden, where she led the children by the hand. A turning point came when she signed the adoption papers. It was more than legal formality. It was her declaration to the world. These children were no longer orphans. They had a home. They had a mother. At the same time, Selena announced the founding of the Angela Johnson Foundation, named after the woman who had passed yet left an indelible mark. The foundation's mission was to support single mothers and homeless children across Georgia, an act of atonement for Marcus's silence and for the years Selena herself had once turned away. At the foundation's launch, held in an old theater in downtown Atlanta, the hall blazed with lights. Business leaders, politicians, and ordinary citizens gathered to hear Malik step onto the wooden podium. Dressed in a simple suit, his hands trembled, but his voice rang clear. My mother did not give birth to me, but she gave me life. The words drew a moment of hushed silence before the audience erupted in a standing ovation. From the front row, Selena's eyes brimmed with tears. Tears she did not hide. She knew this moment was not only hers, but also a proclamation to the world that family could be redefined by love. 3 years passed. Malik, now 16, had grown taller, his gaze steadier. Standing before the press, he was no longer the boy curled under the rain, but a young man filled with resolve. He declared his intention to study law so one day he could defend children of the streets like himself, ensuring no one else would endure the pain of being abandoned in darkness. Selena watched her son, pride and relief swelling within her. A life she had once thought condemned to solitude was being rewritten by the hands of a new generation. One summer afternoon, Selena returned to the very road of that fateful storm. The highway still roared with traffic, but to her eyes it was transformed. She stopped at the median, stepped out, and gazed at the water stains on the asphalt. Thank you for not driving away that day, she whispered. What once seemed a reckless impulse had become destiny's turning point, transforming her from the cold ice queen into a true mother. Yet every journey holds its shadows. While clearing Marcus's old office in the mansion, Selena stumbled upon a steel lockbox hidden behind a painting. The lock was rusted, but inside were unsent letters, files Marcus had kept secret. She lifted them, her hands trembling. What lay within might not only be the missing fragments of Marcus's life, but the opening of a new storm, one powerful enough to unravel everything she had just built. Atlanta's afternoon sank into a soft orange hue, a gentle breeze drifting through the wide windows of the Stone Mountain estate. Selena sat on the balcony, behind her the laughter of Malik and the twin girls rising from the rose garden. A new family had taken shape, not bound by blood alone, but built from love, responsibility, and choice. From the cold ice queen, she had rediscovered her heart in the sound of children's laughter, in Malik's once tentative steps, now growing steady, in the hopeful eyes of the two little girls. And yet, peace is never eternal. In Selena's hands now rested a heavy, time-worn steel lockbox. It had once belonged to Marcus, her late husband. Inside lay unsent letters, files that could unlock another truth, another storm. As her fingers brushed the rusted lock, she felt a warning deep inside. The road ahead would hold not only the light of family, but also the shadows waiting to consume it. Selena's story reminds us, family is not determined by blood alone, but by how we choose to love and protect one another. Truth may be painful, but only by facing it can we find healing. If you're watching from the United States or anywhere in the world, share your thoughts. Do you believe Selena will be strong enough to open that secret door? Don't forget to leave a comment, share this video with your friends, and let us know if you want to see part 2 of this dramatic story.